Welcome back to season 3 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We are here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go. In this episode, we have Chris, who shares his compelling story of growing up in East Texas, his battles with alcoholism and drug abuse, and his journey to sobriety. Born in 1972 in Tyler, Texas, Chris grew up witnessing heavy drinking in his community. Despite a supportive extended family, Chris struggled with feeling uncomfortable in his own skin. After several interventions in which he spent 12 months in a strict rehab center, Chris initially found sobriety at 22. However, after having another drink, after 8.5 years of sobriety, he experienced a dark period of relapse. Chris openly narrates the challenging yet ultimately successful battle to regain his sobriety, his personal growth, and his current role as a father. He emphasizes the importance of persistence, the need for a strong support system, and how his views have changed over the years. And this is Chris's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. How's it going out there, everyone? Brad here. Welcome back to another incredible episode. Thank you for all the notes and messages, too, on that solo episode. It's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, to be honest, but I'm glad I put it together, and hopefully in the near future here, I'll put some more of that stuff together and hopes to help people just kind of work through this whole thing. On another note, too, I've been getting a lot of messages, a lot of emails about people that are struggling with stringing some days together. They feel like they're failing because they're falling off, they're slipping, they're relapsing after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is. Everybody has their own journey. But I just want to remind everybody, this only doesn't work out if you quit trying. So no matter your situation is, you've got to dust yourself off, get back up, and get back at it. Because you'll hear in these stories, I've done over 142 of them here on the podcast, but also just in real life. And before I even started doing this podcast, it's very, very, very rare that you hear a story of the first time everything worked out according to the plan. It's very rare. So if things are a little bit rocky for you, that's okay. You have to keep going, stay plugged in, and join a community. Find a community of people that have been through this that can help support you. We're hosting free meetings inside of the Sober Buddy community every single week. I'm doing one coming up next week on Wednesday. We've got one tonight, Tuesday, April 2nd. I'm going to try to make that too. So if you want to check that out, check that out. I'll drop the link for that in the show notes below. It might be helpful for you. The people who attend on a regular basis are finding it extremely helpful for them to stay on track. All right, let's get to Chris's story. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got Chris with us. Chris, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks, Brad. How are you?
I'm well, man. I'm glad that we could connect and share your story here on the show.
Good. Thanks for having me on. Excited. So, yeah.
Perfect. Well, what was it like for you growing up?
Growing up, okay, so I was born in East Texas. They call it the Pine Curtain because it's the piney woods of East Texas, real close to Louisiana. I was born in Tyler, Texas, and I grew up in a really small town of like 2,500 people. We had a red light, a Dairy Queen, a Sonic, and it was the 70s. So I was born in 72. Very interesting time. Looking back, I didn't know politically or culturally what was going on, but East Texas was one of the last places to desegregate their schools. And that happened the year I was born. And so what's interesting, like looking back on it, is I grew up in a time of a lot of tension in our school. We didn't know what was going on. We were just kids. But my childhood was very happy. A lot of my extended family, like my grandparents, my great aunts, my great uncles, I was really close with those. My immediate household was dad was an alcoholic and my mom was like the typical person that's married to an alcoholic. And being an alcoholic in East Texas was like, or at least being a heavy drinker was very common back then. There's a lot of dualities where I'm from. It's drink, cuss, and smoke, Monday through Saturday, go to church and act good on Sunday and that kind of thing. Our county, because it was in the Bible Belt. I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Bible Belt, but there's a church on every corner. Our county was a dry county, which means they didn't sell alcohol. But what that meant for most of my friends and myself is our parents just on Saturday would drive to the liquor store and we were always fully stocked with alcohol in our house. Looking back and after doing a lot of work, that whole like Texas mentality of being a man and what is a man and the kind of stuff that I was programmed with very young um, was kind of that like John Wayne kind of attitude, like
Yeah.
walk soft, carry a big stick. There's a lot of fist fights growing up. There was a lot of tough guy, don't show your feelings, don't show your emotions, tough it out. So I wasn't raised like learning how to handle emotions. And so I think because of that and maybe being predisposed to it, I always felt different and out of place. And I don't know if that's a common theme that you hear on your podcast, but it's
Yeah.
definitely a common theme I hear from people that struggle with substance abuse issues or alcoholism. So yeah, growing up was different. But then I also remember a lot of love from my extended family. Like I was really close with my grandmother. I was really close with her sisters and her brothers.
Mm.
I learned a lot of cool stuff about nature growing up and being a country kid and, growing up fishing and hunting and just being outside. I learned how to respect nature and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, that's a thing that comes up, man, in probably every episode. I think
yeah.
that there's that thing to where we feel that there's something different, we feel out of place. I always look at it like I was looking at life out of a snow globe, like I was in the snow globe in my own little world, and then everybody else was just operating outside of that. And it's so interesting. When you mention that, is there a specific time when you were able to pick up on that to where you realize I feel different with things?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I mean, there probably was. I mean, I could think of several times. And I think I always had like that feeling I had to prove myself. So I would never like back down in any situation. I remember being in like 4th or 5th grade and this freshman from down the street was picking on me and I just picked a stick up and whacked him. And I didn't do that because I was tough or angry. I did it because I was scared and not scared of him, but just scared of not like being a man and scared of not doing what I was supposedly programmed to do. And I
Yeah.
was always extreme, but I do remember that. And yeah, so I mean, I think there were several incidences, but I think I was always aware of it
Yeah.
and I mean, you kind of grow up and you do a lot of work on yourself and you learn that most people do this. I think whether they're have substance abuse or not is they compare their insides to everybody else's outsides because everybody
Yeah.
to some extent puts up a front, especially now with like social media and we're just showing people like what we want them to see, not really what's in here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I can relate to you too. There was a bunch of different situations. I noticed too when I started to do it early on, because once I felt less than or the insecurity started to overwhelm me or the anxiety and trying to fit in, that's when I started wearing all these different masks in life. That's when I just
Hmm.
started to be this person in this social group. I was this person at home. I was
Right.
this person in this class. I was that. And for a while it worked, but it was really a hard thing to keep together. I was just exhausted. And I mean, this is all looking back. At the time, I didn't necessarily pick up on this. I wasn't intuitive in that sense to know that
Hmm.
this is what I was doing, but I was doing what I thought everybody else wanted me to be, or I was being what I thought
Yeah.
everybody else wanted me to be. And then I just got so farther away from who I actually was. And then I like lost myself for a bit, like probably in high school
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
who I was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you just talking, I just remembered like there was one time where it got really extreme, and that was right before my 16th birthday. And that was after the drinking and using some drugs and smoking pot daily started kicking in. But I remember just feeling just so uncomfortable to my own skin. And my
Mm.
parents put me actually in on my 16th birthday, they put me in this place in Shreveport, Louisiana. It was a residential, I don't know if it was a treatment center or what it was, but I remember seeing a counselor. I remember them like really working with us on like getting our grades and learning how to be responsible. Cause at that time my grades were failing. I'd always keep my grades together during football season so I could play. And then when football season was over, I'd just kind of go hang out with the kids that weren't doing anything again. And so I remember having, like you said, like I was a chameleon, like you, like would act one way over here, but, then when it was time to, hang out with my people, those were the guys we had a tree we hung out at before school and after school. I would go hang out with those dudes, and that's where I felt the most comfortable.
Yeah.
So,
What was that? What was the place? So did you go and live there, this place your parents
yeah, it
brought
was
you
like a
to?
hospital kinda setting, I
Huh?
remember. Yeah, so it was like a 45-day deal. It was called Charter Hospital, I
Oh.
remember that. It's in Shreveport, Louisiana. I went ahead and went. I didn't fight it. And then there's like a story a little later. So I kind of got through that. And then they had me go to this ranch kind of place for 6 months in Arkansas. And then I came back. And then that's when things got really kind of heavy for me as a teenager when I came back. And that was like the late 80s. And ecstasy started becoming a thing, MDMA. And it was like, started really in Dallas, Texas. And Dallas was about 2 hours from where I was from. And then I started like buying and selling that stuff. My dad had like bought me a truck. I just took that truck one day and I took it to a car dealership and I sold it and I started
Mm.
buying it like ecstasy and selling it. And I got in pretty bad shape. And this is when I was 17 and I wasn't living with my parents. I'd moved out and I was living in Tyler, which was the city kind of by the little small town I grew up in. It had 150,000 people in it. It was like almost like a trap house. We were like selling drugs out of there and doing our thing. And I was a minor, but it was the 80s. So things were kind of different back then. But your parents still had control over you. And it was a mess. I'm 6'1" and I'd gotten down to 140 pounds and historically been a pretty athletic kid and bags under my eyes. And I was in bad shape. My dad calls me and goes, "You want some help and me help you kind of get on your feet?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I think at that point I'd probably lost all my money and just things weren't going well. I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, how about I help you get an apartment?" "That sounds great. I'll pick you up Monday morning." And so he picks me up and we're driving around and he pulls in this parking lot. He goes, "I got to get something from this guy. He's going to meet me here. He's going to give me a list of places for us to go look at." And he pulls up next to this like van and it was just a van with no windows and
Mm.
big ass dude that he had hired jumps out of the van, handcuffs me, and throws me in the van and takes me to a place in Dallas. And that place was called Straight. And it was kind of like that. They called it spit therapy. They'd get in your face and yell at you. They'd beat you up pretty good if you got out of line. It was a lockdown facility that your parents could have you committed to. It was kind of a cross between juvenile hall and some like just weird thing out of like the 80s, you know what I mean? And I was locked in that thing for a little over a year. He was able to get me committed there for a little over a year. Yeah, that was a pretty gnarly experience. Didn't use drugs in there though, didn't smoke cigarettes. It was so structured and you were kind of locked in a room at night. And yeah, it was wild. It's kind of hard to explain. A couple years after I got out of there, the state of Texas shut the place down for being abusive. But yeah,
It's yeah, no, that's wild, man. Because I can relate to you on that. I went to a place just like it. I was
did you really? So,
yeah,
wow.
man.
Yeah.
I was 17 and everything was unmanageable in my life. I'd already had been arrested and got kicked out of school and was on probation and things were just out of control. And I actually ended up in a psychiatric hospital for these suicidal thoughts. My parents hired to, what do you call it? A transporting company. Two people came. They picked
Mhm.
me up in North Carolina and they were bringing me to this place called Peninsula Village in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I had no idea that parents could get you sent to these places or that they existed. My life was just
Yeah.
completely unraveling and ended up being there for a year and it was a lockdown unit. They did restraints. It was structured. I mean, you had 3 minutes to go to the bathroom, 7 minutes to shower. You sat there, you did a couple group therapies. Yes, I'm with you on that. It's a
Sounds
wild
real similar to
experience.
something I went through, and I was there for 13 and a half months, and this place was wild, man. You had to sit at attention for hours, and that meant you sit in a chair and your back couldn't touch the chair. You had to be up straight. Man, I had great posture when I got out of there, man, so and if you didn't do that, they'd have one of the guards come by and he'd put his knuckles in your back and pull your upper body back and make sure you were sitting up straight. They made sure you felt it.
Yeah. So, like, looking back on this, because this is interesting, the place I went to, it got shut down 2 years after because they
Mhm,
used to have physical consequences. So if you
mhm,
swore or if you did anything out of line, there was rules for everything. You'd have to do push-ups and
mhm.
pull-ups and sit-ups and yeah, different consequences, right? That were just deemed overly punitive. Like,
Yeah.
looking back on it, I mean, what's your take on things? This was a good intervention for you at the
Well
time?
well, I mean, it saved my life as far as just getting me off the streets, but mentally, it wasn't a good thing. So, I mean, there's 2 sides to that story. Like, I probably needed to get off the street and probably would have been a little bit better to put me somewhere that was actually doing some good, and it's weird because that was my senior year of high school,
Mhm.
and the end of my junior year, all of my senior year. So a lot of those guys and girls that I was in there with, those were like my high school friend. Like we got close and
Yeah.
it really messed a lot of people up long term. I have a
Mhm.
guy I grew up with and I've known him since third grade. And actually we just kind of we have a little reunion every 3 or 4 years. He was like, man, that place broke me. And he goes, I got out of there and I told myself I was never going to let anybody break me again. And he turned into just a gnarly dude. We're in our 50s now. I think he's probably spent like, half of his adult life in and out of prison. He's out now, but it really had a real adverse effect on some people. But
Yeah.
me, it was like going to crime school because I learned some hustles in there from some other people that eventually
Yeah.
led me to coming out to California and you know
Yeah.
where I am now. So yeah.
So where'd you go after that?
And then my dad actually did have a condo, an apartment that he owned in Dallas. I got to live there. Experimented with going to college, bounced around, finished my high school at one of those continuation schools in Dallas, living on my own, and then kind of got into some it's kind of hard to explain, but I got into some ways of making money that didn't involve dealing drugs that weren't so legitimate, and stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, but I did. And it all revolved around like call centers and boiler rooms. And there was just some stuff going on that we were making money. And me and another guy, we started making contacts kind of all over the country doing this kind of stuff. And so at that point, everybody thinks I'm doing great because I'm not getting too out of hand where I'm losing a bunch of weight and
Mm.
I'm paying my bills and I'm making money. And I ended up getting a really nice place, buy myself a car, and kind of had a front to this stuff. Oh yeah, we're in the leads business. That was our kind of thing, as we'd say. And so ended up talking to my friend one day and he goes, let's go meet all these people we've been doing business with over the phone and talking
Mhm.
to and doing FedEx stuff. And so we went and spent some time in Denver, Colorado. I spent a winter in Aspen. And then he's, let's go to California. Yeah, let's go to California. You think about like Hollywood and palm trees and all this. And so we got in the car and where should we go? And we stayed a couple nights in this like seedy hotel, just trying to figure it out. We didn't even know it was a seedy hotel. And we drove to Venice one day. He goes, I went to high school with this girl that lives in Venice. Let's go to Venice Beach. And went to Venice Beach. And my first day in Venice Beach and been there like a couple hours. And we're down on the boardwalk and Rodney Dangerfield, the comedian, comes walking by. I'm like, oh, there's a movie star. And then there's another famous dude down in Venice Beach that plays a guitar, skates around on rollerblades. And so we got a picture of me and my buddy and Rodney Dangerfield and this guy. My first 2 hours in Venice, we rented an apartment there. And we're just having fun, man. Like, I'm not really having any, like, consequences from what I'm doing at that point. We're making money. Life is good. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we're doing stuff we're not supposed to be doing, but my family thought I was doing good and stayed there about a year. And I always really missed Texas. I was always like, I want to move back to Texas. And we lived in Venice for a year. I probably spent half the time in Venice and then I'd fly home to Texas and hang out in Dallas with my friends and then just kind of back and forth. And about a year into it, I was like adamant. I'm like, I'm moving back to Dallas. And my friends, hey, let's go check out Orange County. I found a house on the water down in Newport Beach that we can rent. And it was this really cool house. And I go down and look at it and I go, yeah, I'll do this for you for 6 months. And so ended up moving to Orange County. It was on this little island called Lido Island. And right across the bridge is the peninsula. And on the peninsula, there's the Newport Beach Alano Club, which for people that don't know, that's a club where they hold AA meetings and sober people hang out, that kind of stuff. And so we moved there and I'm like 22 at the time. And I'm like walking by, I'm like, oh, there's a sober club there. And I'd remembered all the back up. My dad ended up getting sober when I was 14. So I knew about recovery and 12 steps and all that kind of stuff through my dad. And so I was walking by that club and there's all these like people having fun out there one day and they're all kind of my age. They're all in their 20s and there's good looking girls and I'd walk by there like for a couple weeks, just kind of checking things out about 5 o'clock. And what I didn't know is there was a meeting going on at 5:30. It was a young people's meeting. It was upstairs. One day I just wandered in there, man, and went to a meeting and I didn't get sober right away, but then at the end of 1994, I was 22. I ended up deciding that I got sober. And I'm like, let me try this stuff. And so that was the beginning of my sobriety journey. Yeah. So I knew I needed to be. I wasn't in a spot like I was when I was 17, but talking about that feeling of like uncomfortable, restless, irritable, discontent, not happy. I had stuff, but I hadn't run things into the ground, but I just knew I needed to be sober. Something inside me told me, hey man, you need to quit doing everything you're doing. Cause I was a daily drinker. I was
Mm,
doing blow at the time, doing all those outside issues, man, that we do. And I think I felt that like the wheels were going to fall off. I think I always felt that at some point we were going to get in trouble for what we were doing, and we were getting a lot closer to getting in trouble. This was
mm,
before the internet, before a lot of security cameras were around. And so, yeah. So I walked in there and got sober, and I met a bunch of like young guys that were on fire for sobriety,
mm,
happy, having fun, and got a sponsor. And the sponsors, people that don't know, is like somebody you get when you walk into the rooms of a 12-step program that helps you understand what it's about and takes you through the 12 steps. And I got on a sober softball team. I was playing basketball. I was kind of getting back into my athletic kind of roots. And just had a lot of fun, man. Like from 20 to probably 20 something, I quit that business. My friend was working at a surf company called Billabong, and his boss was Bob Hurley, who ended up starting Hurley. And he told my friend, like, hey, if you buy some of this equipment, I'll give you work. And so he asked me if I wanted to do it with him. And we bought some manufacturing equipment. And this was before everything had gone to China and apparel was still manufactured, and a lot of it in Southern California, especially in the surf and skate industry. And started a company doing that, started having success and had a lot of fun. And I was always like, still like in the back of my mind, really kind of wanting to move back to Texas. And at 24 years old, this girl I was like hanging out with ended up telling me she was pregnant. And I'm like, whoa, thought it was like the worst thing in the world, man, that happened to me, and really confused on what to do. Should I marry her? Should I not marry her? I got all different kinds of advice from all different kinds of people. And had this old guy like that I really respected that had 30 years sober, just put his arm around me and just goes, you just got to show up and be a dad and be a service. All that other stuff you can figure out as you go. And so that's what I did, man. Ended up having a kid at 25. He's 27 now. I'm so proud of the kid. I'll tell you more about him later, but he's doing great. And he's doing really good being sober, man. And
yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's exciting. That's exciting too, getting in on the ground level of those incredible companies moving forward, doing the manufacturing, moving your operations to legitimate operations as well. And the sobriety, you walk in, you check it out. Did you
yeah.
face any challenges at 2022 when you walk in there? What's some stuff that comes up at 22 with getting
It's
sober?
funny now that I like have like kids that have gone my son's gone through his 20s, and I think about now, he's about the same age I was when he was like 2 years old. And like I look at him and I'm like, oh, I was that young. Like his mind.
Yeah.
I think my challenges at that time was like definitely had a lot of energy to get up and grind and work. So that was fun. Um,
Mm,
that feeling of not fitting in really was it went away when I quit drinking and I got around a bunch of other people that had kind of been through what I'd been through. At
mm,
least I could relate to the way they felt and were doing positive things. And so that was like, I guess one of the challenges that got solved like really quickly just by getting around those people. And we just had so much fun back then. I mean, we'd go on trips, we'd go to softball tournaments, we'd play basketball tournaments. There was these two coffee shops around here that were open till 3 or 4 in the morning. It was all sober young people hanging out in. There
yeah.
were sober parties, sober dances back then. I mean, there was such a movement of young people in the 90s getting sober around here. And there still is movement of young people getting sober. I'm just old now, so I don't know where they are. But I mean, we had so much fun. So, and then here's what happened, right? And kind of here's the downfall of it is about 28, 29, life started getting like materialistically really good. Buying properties. I kind of started like getting away from these guys over here that were sober and kind of moving to people that I worked with that weren't sober.
Mm,
But on the outside had it together, and a lot of them did have it together. And so the thought in my mind started coming up, well, maybe that was just a phase. Maybe that was just because of your upbringing. Because I did a lot of work on my upbringing when I got sober and who am I really? And what is the definition of somebody that's a man? And so I started questioning whether or not, right, I was a true like addict or alcoholic. Could I control drinking? And so at 30, at 8.5 years sober, and I'm out on a date with a girl as like a second or third date with a girl that I barely knew and just kind of getting to know, nice girl. And we were at the Improv at a comedy show and they had a 2 drink minimum. And historically, when I'd be at one of those things, okay, 2 Cokes. Well, I ordered 2 beers without even kind of thinking about it.
Mm.
And I drank those 2 beers. And I think what happened when I started moving away from those sober group of people and everybody, I started feeling that sense of uncomfortability again without identifying it, knowing it. And so I drank those 2 beers, ordered 2 more. And I remember about halfway through the 4th beer, feeling that warm buzz come over me that I hadn't felt in 8.5 years. And I remember my mind going, man, this is great. Why did I ever quit doing this? And then, okay, I'm making deals with myself. I'm not going to do drugs. So I made that deal with myself. I'm just going to drink and maybe try to just do it on the weekends. And so we went back to her house and she had some pot and I'm like, well, pot's not a drug. So I smoked some weed with her. And then 4 days later, I'm in Vegas and that was like our annual big convention for the apparel industry. And there's some guys doing blow and did some blow 4 days after I made that deal with myself. And I mean, I was off and running for 4 years and it got pretty ugly. So,
Yeah, it happens so fast. It happens so
mhm,
fast again, right? We bargain, make those deals with
mhm,
ourselves, right? Everything, right? There's so many people you hear it, all the different
mhm,
strategies that we tried, right? Whether it's the
yeah,
weekends or whether it's after 5 or it's this budget
right.
or it's that. But when we open the floodgates there, it just comes in, right? We're just saying yes to all to
Yeah.
everything now, right?
Yeah, I would start saying yes, and then all those yets start happening. I'm not gonna drink with my son in the house. Then I'm drinking with my son in the house. Okay, I'll drink, but I'm just not gonna do drugs with my son when I have him. And I'm doing drugs in the house with him. I'm not gonna drive drunk. I'm driving drunk. It's like I just cross line after line. And it's for me, and this is not true for everyone, but for me, it's not like we talk about getting hit by the train. It's not the caboose that kills you. It's always the engine. For me, it's the first one, right? And I've proven to myself, and I can kind of get a little more into that in a minute, over and over and over and over again, that I can't just have one. And I'm a pretty self disciplined, willpower guy in every aspect of my life. If I tell myself I'm going to work out every day, I work out every day. If I tell myself I'm going to not eat sugar for a month, I don't have a problem putting things down
Mm,
except for drugs and alcohol. So I have a lot of willpower, just not in that area. So yeah.
yeah. You said you're gonna explain that a little bit more too, because I'm interested to see what you put together there for about what happens when you do like, when you did have that one, I mean, the chain reaction of events.
Yeah, the chain reaction of events, and about 2 years into it, I'd crossed all these lines. My self-esteem and just how I like viewed myself had just kind of gone out the window. And I start getting people like trying to have talks with me. My family tried to have an intervention on me, and I got up and I walked out. I wasn't going to listen to them. My son's mom was like, and she's long term sober. I met her in the program when I was in my 20s, and she was
Mm,
just, she was so like, Alan, like, and this is, we talked about this before, so not everybody understands this, but there's a certain way to approach an alcoholic if you're a family member. And there's a program called Al Anon. If people ever just have family members and they want to know how to deal with their alcoholic, it's a beautiful program. But she would approach me out of love, but also truth.
mm,
And she did a good job of that. And I knew everybody knew what was going on. And I thought I was keeping it together, but the bank account was dwindling. I'd lost a bunch of money. And one thing after another was happening, and I'd met a girl when I was drinking. She was a really nice girl, and I'd known her for about a year and a half. And I asked her to marry me, and I got engaged. We'd been engaged about a month, and this was right before Christmas. And I was supposed to spend Christmas Eve with her family, And the night before, I kind of stayed up all night doing blow, and I'm like really a mess, man. But I'm gonna try to pull it off and go see your family. And it's the afternoon of Christmas Eve, and I told her I'd be over there in about an hour, and I stopped by my drug dealer's house, and they're smoking crack out of a Coke can, and I'm like, man, I've never smoked crack out of a Coke can. Let me try that. I'd smoke crack out of a crack pipe. Coke can, and for some reason in our heads, we're like, oh, that's something different. I got to try that. And so anyway, 4 days later, I didn't show up to Christmas, and I'm back at my house. I'm with somebody else that I'd met on this run, and I'm just a mess. And I remember sitting in the shower, and we call it a moment of clarity sometimes. And I'm sure you've had that, like where it's just, I got to get it together. Okay. It's time to admit defeat. And I'm sitting in the shower, get out. I called my AA sponsor, who's like, I've had the same guy since I was 22. He's still my sponsor. So he's 30 years my sponsor. But I called him, and I'm like, I need to get sober again. And he sent he's my best friend, but we have the same sponsor. And so he sent him to come pick me up. And he took me to another friend's house. And, I'm all just wired. And I walk over to the liquor store, and I get a bottle of Crown Royal. I drink that. They take me to an AA meeting. I hung out at another one of my friend's house for about 4 days, planning on getting sober again. And that was the start of a 2-year journey of trying to get sober and not being able to get sober. And I'd get 3 days and I'd go out. I'd get a week, I'd go out. I think a couple times in there I had 30 days and I'd go out. And Brad, I really wanted to be sober. Like I really did. And I just couldn't make a day stick because I'd get moving. I'd do everything I was told to do. I'd go to recovery meetings. I'd call my guys. I'd work steps. I'd do everything. And I'd be in a place and I'd be on the wrong frame of mind, or just something would happen that would set me off. And without thinking, I mean, I knew what I was doing. Like it wasn't unconscious, but it's just, I had no mental defense against what they say is the first drink. And that's kind of a term that's said in recovery a lot of times. It's when I was talking about that willpower, like I could do a lot of things with willpower, but I just didn't have the willpower to quit. And that was a 2-year just death march. So, yeah.
Yeah. Was that how things would usually start back up for you with drinking, and then you might get into the other stuff,
Everything
doing
always
cocaine?
started with alcohol and ended with alcohol. And I really like cocaine, but when I really analyze it and do some self-reflection, the reason I like cocaine so much is because I could drink longer. One didn't ever go by itself, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah. No, for sure, 100%. So it's a different sort of spot maybe you find yourself in as opposed to when you were 22 and you went to that
absolutely,
first young person's where,
absolutely.
like, just hearing just us chatting before, what I kinda took away from it is, well, maybe not it was a lot easier, but it was a different process for you to quit that first time. You were
Mhm.
interested and you got involved in
Yeah,
things made sense, and then at this time, you're further along, right? In this journey of addiction, and now you're really facing what I think a lot of us go through is that point in time where we have that moment of clarity, and then it's, "I wanna quit, but how like, how do I do this, right? What am I gonna do?" And then we try and we fall down, scrape our knees, and then kinda get back up, and you go through that 2 years. I can relate with you 100% because I was like that. I did the drinking was always consistent for me. I did the methadone program. I did the Suboxone program. I would be back on the
mhm,
medication. I'd be back drinking. The drinking would get messed up with the methadone program, then the Xanax, you know what I mean? The cocaine and the
yeah,
drug test. It's just a whirlwind, right? And then
mhm,
people look at you. I had the counselors and they would just look at me like, what's going on here? And honestly, now I know, but at the time, I would just shake my head and kinda just be full of shame and just
mhm,
kind of embarrassed. I just did not know what was wrong with me when all these other people were figuring it out. I was like, "Man, I don't know. I'm
yeah.
stuck here." So where do you go from that? I mean, how do you get yourself out of here, Chris?
Well, I mean, I just wanna kinda comment on what you said before I answer that question. It's so true, and it's like, I had built such a sober community in my 20s, and now I'm, like, in my mid-30s when I'm coming back, and I had close people that really cared about me, and there's all these other people that I know too that are sober, and you go down to these meetings and these old guys would be like, "Hey, what are you gonna do different this time?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. I'm doing everything I can. What do you mean?" And so I'll tell you the story about my last drink, and then it'll kind of lead into me answering your
Yeah.
question. Is I'm down there one night, and this one like old dude goes, "What are you gonna do different?" I'm like, "I have no idea." And then this other old dude that I really respected
Yeah.
speaks up. He goes, "Chris, the truth is, just because you want to get sober doesn't mean you get to get sober." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And I just shook my head and I walked out and I'm pissed off and I go home. My neighbors are drinking. I have a six pack of beer. I smoked a joint and I go to bed and I'm just laying there and that guy's voice is like in my head. Just because I want to get sober doesn't mean I get to get sober. And then I'm like, man, maybe I'm just going to be one of those guys that just can't get it. Cause I knew guys like that from being around sober people a lot of times. And I would always like look at them when I was sober before, like, why can't they just do it? And then I'd become that guy that couldn't do it. That was my last drink. And for some reason, I got up and I just tried again. And I just dusted myself off and I tried again. And I spoke at a meeting on Sunday night. And that's kind of my message to new people is just keep trying. I mean, like you were talking, Brad, it's like you were trying and trying, and people are going to look at you, especially people that haven't lived the life and been in the shoes that we've been in. They're not going to understand, and that's okay. But there's guys like me and you that get it. Find those guys and seek them out because I just tried again. And that's what was not different. That's what I continued doing. And that was June 4th, 2006. And that was my
Yeah.
sobriety day. And man, I got up, I went back to another recovery meeting. I kept calling that sponsor and I just didn't drink. The big thing for me that I think I really dove into, and I dove into it and still drank before, but I just kept diving into it was like, I didn't trust myself. The beautiful thing now, like in the current day of what's going on, is there's so many opportunities to get that first 30 days in a residential treatment center, which is a safe space. Because I had to kind of create that for myself and ask people to hang out with me when I didn't feel safe or go
Mm.
sleep on somebody's couch that was sober, even though I had a place to go. That's the beautiful thing about what's going on today. So,
Yeah. So true.
yeah.
So where do you go from here? I mean, 17 years, right? You said. I mean, that's
Yeah.
incredible. Well done, man.
Yeah, so life's been great. I continued in that apparel business. Son really I was telling you about athletics, man. My oldest son started wanting to play football, so I started like getting back into my true love, which was football and coaching football in the afternoons. And at about a year sober, I met my current wife. She's in recovery as well, and we ended up getting married. I had a couple years, so married a little over 15 years, and we had a kid right away. So right after we got married, like, she got pregnant with my 14-year-old Zach. And then it was kind of funny about my kids. I joke, I've had a kid every decade since 97. So like we held off. She wanted to have another one. And I'm like, and finally, like we decided to after about 10 years after our previous one was born. So I have a 4-year-old daughter. So I've got a 27-year-old that was born in 97, a 14-year-old that was born in '09, and a 4-year-old that was born in 19. So
Wow.
yeah, I've been a parent of young kids since my 20s, man. So, I mean, it's just been a beautiful journey. And I've learned so much about what I don't know instead of learning more information, if that makes sense, right? I've
Yeah,
learned that
yeah,
my opinions will change if I have a strong enough opinion. It's kind of funny that. Um, and life was good, man. It's got sober, kept my career going, was doing really well with that. I started coaching football with my younger kid, then ended up becoming a high school head football coach down here in California, and then
mhm,
got into coaching some junior college and then coached freshman ball while my son went to college. And my 14-year-olds never see me drink. My 4-year-olds never see me drink. And that older kid, man, I'm so proud of him, man. He's just been a good kid. I got to be his varsity high school head coach at the high school he went to. He ended up getting a scholarship to go play football out in Pennsylvania. Played there for 4 years. Went to Germany and played pro a couple of years with his college quarterback after he got done and got to travel around and see Europe and then came back. And now he's a firefighter in Malibu, killing it. And my 14-year-old is doing great. He's in 8th grade. He's going into high school next year. I ended up kind of reeling it back and coaching his Pop Warner team last year. And then My 4-year-old, I thought I was gonna have a daughter, and it was gonna be cuddles on the couch and Barbie dolls, and she's a tougher kid than any of my boys, man. She's wild and just full of life and energy, and gotta reel her in a lot, but, yeah, I mean, a lot of joy in marriage, but it's also a lot of work. My wife and I both work really hard on our marriage. It's had its ups and downs. Say the most important thing besides my sobriety in my life, and the reason I say besides my sobriety, because if I don't have my sobriety, I don't have my marriage. I'm not a father or anything like that,
Mm.
but I have a wonderful marriage with a smart, successful, driven wife who has her own career and her own things going on. And then it's interesting, unless you want to stop and ask me anything right now, I kind of want to talk about that comment that I made about having opinions,
Go ahead.
because the guys that like I learned sobriety from are real old school 12 step guys. And when I started getting sober in the 90s, there was like maybe two treatment centers that I knew of, and they were like for the rich people to go to because they back then insurance didn't pay for treatment. And I always kind of had this attitude towards treatment. Guys would say in meetings, well, you're buying a $30,000 AA book, or you know what I mean? This, that, or the other. So,
Yeah.
but I always kind of like knew treatment. For some people, I thought it was good, but what kind of what my experience of what kind of got me sober. And
Mm.
I sold one company before COVID, a couple years before COVID, and was just by myself. And I was brokering deals that tied around a lot of events and just cruising along, and life's good. And I'm coaching high school football in the afternoons. So I'm working 5 or 6 hours a day, and then going out and coaching high school, coach high school ball 3 or 4 hours a day. And um, I'm flying to Pennsylvania for all my son's home games and having a blast. And COVID hits, man, and I lost a lot of business in 1 week. That was my income and my what I was going to be doing, because I'd get orders 4 or 5 months out for the summer. And sitting there and I'm watching TV and the NBA cancels, and I had a panic attack, and I never had a panic attack before, but I literally couldn't breathe because I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm at my sister's house at the time. I went outside and I just couldn't breathe. And up the next day, and I knew this guy that my sister, who you should have on one time, by the way, because her story is incredible. I brought her out here 8 years ago, and she went to treatment, got sober, and she's doing wonderful now. But she was working at a treatment center, and I knew the guy that owned it. He was one of my friends from the sober community, and I said, "Hey, can I
Mm.
have a job?" And he's kinda laughed at me because I knew him pretty well. He's like, "What are you gonna do, man? You have a career and all that." I go, "Man, I just have to go somewhere every day." And he goes, "Well, do you wanna work in my detox?" And I go, "What does that mean?" And he goes, "You're gonna hang out with newcomers all day and talk to them and help them with different stuff, and you gotta support them." And he kinda gave me I go, "Yeah, I can do that. How much is it?" And he goes, "Minimum wage." And I go, "Sign me up." And so I went and worked in his detox, and man, I just fell in love with it. And that's when like the fentanyl stuff, like I started seeing it. Oh my God, this is different. This isn't what I was dealing with when I got sober. The feelings those guys were going through were the same, but the consequences were way different. And about 3 months into it, their business development guy left, and I started doing that. And then I started learning the business, and I started learning all that kind of stuff. Yeah, just kind of worked
Mm.
my way up. I worked at a couple other places, and then I got hired on at South Coast Counseling, where I currently work as their executive director a couple years ago, and having a blast. So my opinion of saying I'd never work in treatment just completely changed. God had different ideas. And it's like the older I get, the more I am learning to live in like the gray, or I don't know, or that situation is different for everybody. Like we were talking before, is you have a lot
Yeah.
of people listening to this podcast that might not be alcoholics like I am, and they do have willpower, and they can, like with some habit changes, put it down. And then there's going to be guys like me that, and you that, hey, one's too many, a thousand's not enough. So
Yeah. Yes, exactly. No, I love that. And I mean, I think there's been a ton of progress in so many different areas when it comes to how people are getting treatment and how people are accessing treatment and what's helping. And it's always good to have options. I feel like the further that we get on this, at least there's more options for people to be able to
sure.
access things virtually, which I think is incredible. I mean, we do a Sober Buddy, we do virtual peer support community, and we have people from all over the
Awesome.
world, Germany, Poland, Australia. US, Canada, UK. We all come together and we don't have all the answers, but we learn from each
Yeah,
other and we can understand, what it's like and where people are from and just
right.
try to support people in that sense. But yeah, everybody's gonna do stuff. And I think most people who do end up getting sober, like they're probably gonna have tried a handful of things before
Sure.
they kind of find the one thing that really hits
Mhm.
home for them. Beautiful, Chris. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing your story with all of us, man. Is there anything else you want to mention that we haven't yet?
Yeah, I could talk to you for hours, Brad. So no, maybe we do a follow-up someday. This was a lot of fun and it was awesome. And it's really cool what you do. And I've, gotten to know you a little bit over social media and you've been real gracious with everything that I've been doing and been supportive of that. And thank you for that. Thank you for having me on. So
Yeah, of course, man. But what about the show? What about your podcast? I want
So
to hear
my
more.
podcast is South Coast Chronicles, and you can follow me on Instagram, Chris M. Cox 72. And South Coast Chronicles is just a variety of stories, kind of like we just talked right now, but it's different people that have suffered from mental health or addiction and maybe currently are in it or have worked their way through it. So
Mm,
that's exciting. I release a new episode every week, and anybody that wants to check it out. We have it
yeah.
just as a resource for people to be able to go on and listen. And if anybody needs any help, they can reach out to me. And like you, man, we're just here to try to give people resources. And if we can be their resource, we're their resource. And if we can help them find another resource that fits better for their situation or their location, we're here for people. So,
Yeah, beautiful, man. Love it. Thank you so much again, Chris.
yeah, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, there it is, everyone. Another incredible episode and story here on the podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. I'll drop Chris's contact information to his Instagram down in the show notes below. Now let's go out there and get another day, and I'll see you on the next one.